in 2015, I was living and teaching in a small town in southern Vermont called Rutland. It's there that I became an accidental expert in refugee rights. It's there when I learned what happens when our desire to be welcoming crashes into "not in my backyard." Rutland is actually the second biggest town in the state of Vermont with a population of close to 16,000 people. But it's a funny mixture of rural and urban with a declining population and an opioid problem. Outsiders sometimes call Rutland Rut Vegas, which locals hate, because of the strip malls that line the one main highway that cuts across the top of the town. But just like so many historic New England towns, much of life takes place on the local square, on the green at the town center. This is where the art fairs and the winter fests take place, where summer concerts pulse with energy. This is where life happens. Walking around Rutland, you'll see a quaint coffee shop, a bookstore, and a statue of Martin Freeman, a renowned African-American abolitionist who was born and raised in Rutland, Vermont. Though today, the Black population in Rutland is just about 1.4%, according to the census. It's a town that's in the midst of reclaiming itself as a place to be, with signs that say, "I love Rutland," fluttering on signposts and on banners above doorways. Homeless encampments are not far from stately Victorian houses with wraparound porches. Poverty meets wealth on the same block in this small town in southern Vermont. As an educator trained in urban education, I took my first professor position at a small state school outside of Rutland called Castleton State University. And I worked with local rural educators and first-gen, predominantly white college students. I loved teaching at Castleton, though I routinely felt frustrated that some of my students continued to resist conversations related to anti-racism and cultural literacies, as they felt those issues just weren't relevant to their white monolingual contexts. Yet I was also inspired by the strength of the families, the communities living in rural Vermont, many of whom were underserved, overlooked, and mistreated for years by generational poverty, disenfranchisement from job opportunities, and schools that came up short. Many of the people I met in and around Rutland were similar to the people in my previous home community of Oakland, California. Many were enmeshed in systemic inequalities so great that they were suffering from alcoholism or a lack of fresh food or a lack of access to medical care. And just like the families in Oakland, who defied categorization as urban, the families in small-town Vermont, whether categorized as rural or not, were resourceful, innovative, connected, and also misrepresented. In Oakland, as in Rutland, big divides between the haves and the have-nots persisted. And this divide became evident, even volatile, when Rutland proposed to take in refugees during the Syrian war. In 2015, the Syrian war displaced millions in a matter of months, and by 2016, 6 million people had crossed borders seeking asylum. As the world was taken with images of refugee children, the mayor of Rutland quietly applied to the U.S. government for Rutland to serve as a refugee relocation center for Syrian citizens needing asylum. This was an attempt to address the town's declining population and to step in amidst one of the worst humanitarian crises of the century. A few months later, the mayor announced that Rutland would soon be a relocation site for 100 Syrian families. Meanwhile, all over the country, people opened their hearts and their homes and their wallets to try to support Syrians in crisis. In Rutland, at least half the town mobilized instantly to begin collecting goods and household supplies, and within months, thousands of items had been collected to welcome the new families. Couches, cars, microwaves, dishes, dolls, snowsuits, you name it. People came out in droves to support the Syrians. On the other hand, another part of the community became incensed by the proposition of Rutland becoming a refugee relocation site for Muslim asylum seekers. A group sprung up overnight called Rutland First, naming itself after Trump's hallmark campaign, America First. Rutland First members protested the mayoral decision to make Rutland a relocation site. As solidarity marches at the town square began to take place, Rutland First protesters showed up across the street, sometimes with rifles and Confederate flags. Many in this population had been out of work and down on their luck, and now, out of the blue, talks of job opportunities for Syrians and plans to revitalize neighborhoods took hold. This did not go down easy. Long-standing conflicts about race and class, borders and belonging, conflicts that stretch back to the earliest days of the United States and before, simmered in the public square as rallies for and against refugee resettlement in Rutland took hold. As a professor of education, I saw an opportunity to fill a gap, and I quickly developed a plan to teach a course for local teachers who recognized that many, if not most, had not been trained to support culturally and ethnically and linguistically diverse children in their classrooms. In developing the curriculum, I drew on the expertise of the community who could help us learn about Syria and refugee contexts globally, such as a history professor friend who studied the Middle East, and other community organizers who worked with transnational populations in nearby cities. I invited youth who had escaped war-torn contexts to come and share from their experience. In the first semester of the course, we delved deeply into the complexities of race, class, and nationalism in our own classrooms in Vermont. One teacher shared that his 7th graders were riled up about the Syrian families who were set to arrive in Rutland. He explained that a student had declared that very day, "When they get here, I'm just going to shoot them up. They don't belong here and they are not welcome." The teacher, close to tears, confessed that he had no idea what to do or say or how to intervene, and as a result, he let the moment pass. We sat in silence collectively that night, collectively feeling what it means to look violence in the eye, knowing how daunting the task of making each other human really is and can be. We rehearsed what the teacher could have said to the student and the class, and how he might have responded. Teachers also took positive action and leadership, partially as a result of the class. Some reevaluated their own curriculum to include more diverse voices and histories from around the world and around the country. Other teachers mobilized at the school and district level for greater supports for teachers related to equity and anti-racism in the school system. Around town, anger continued to bubble up at the edges of the green. Sometimes pickup trucks would circle the square, sporting large American flags with drivers shouting things like, "Rutland first," or "Not in my town." But many, many more people gathered in the square, even on bitter, cold days with signs that read, "All are welcome," and "We are all immigrants." Along with the conflict, there was collective warmth, energy, and hope. In the end, due to the Muslim ban put in place in January of 2017, only 3 Syrian families arrived in Rutland. Fortunately, they are thriving in Vermont today. And currently, Rutland is preparing to receive a number of Afghan refugees looking to be resettled. This would not likely have been possible without the groundwork that was laid in 2015 and 2016 in the town square, the coffee shop, and the classrooms. The struggle and conversations then paved the way for the welcome today. I left Rutland in 2018 and now teach at the School of Education here in Boulder, Colorado. I often see signs on my mostly white middle to upper middle class neighbors' lawns that say, "Refugees, welcome here." I applaud this impulse, and I wonder about the reality. In spite of the conflict I saw in Rutland and the tensions that continue today at the national scale about personal rights, immigrant rights, and refugee rights, I do believe that welcoming is possible. I believe that if we continue to work to create communities that welcome rather than divide, if we commit to struggle together, we may begin to grow together, to learn together, and to cultivate more spaces of belonging that are rich in diversity, imagination, and possibility. Thank you.